Jeffrey takes the blue pill every day of the week. Like a blind fool, he walks into all the traps the government laid out for him. In the eyes of the state, he's the perfect little consumer. Weak and easy to manipulate. Adonis took the red pill years ago. He sees Jeffrey falling over and over again and tries to help him. "I don't need your help, that's a conspiracy," screams Jeffrey. So I remember 2 years ago, I was still watching the mainstream media and they talked about this COVID-19 pandemic. You know, this great dangerous disease which is compared to the Black Death in their eyes. And they told me that I should wear masks, that I should get vaccinated right away because if I don't, I will be dead by next year. And they completely created this mass hysteria, this mass fear. And I remember that it consumed my friends and family, a lot of them. And they started to believe everything the mainstream media told them. But I wanted to know more, so I investigated myself. And I ended up watching a lot of podcasts, a lot of news articles. And I remember getting so much more information about it. And these other news articles and podcasts told a completely different story about the whole situation. That the pandemic wasn't that dangerous, that it was easy to solve if you just separate the old people from the young people. And I remember getting all those ideas and I talked about those ideas with my friends. And also my friends talked about COVID overall all the time. You have to imagine at this point, talking with your best friend for 7 years and getting into a huge argument about the COVID pandemic and seeing that fear in their eyes, basically consuming their whole life, wearing masks all the time, getting vaccinated 2-3 times. Your best friend doesn't even want to hang out with you anymore because he thinks you are a danger to him because you might have COVID, because you are not vaccinated. Imagine this, imagine COVID-19 completely breaking up your friendship. So this was my first experience with a huge PSYOP, and this is basically what led me to investigate how the world really works. So let's dive into it. So what's a PSYOP? A PSYOP is a short word for psychological operation. It's in the psyche, it's a mental game. It's meant to influence your mind. It's an operation to influence your mind. And the goal of a PSYOP is to basically influence a targeted group's way of thinking, decision making, or their emotions about a certain thing. A PSYOP is conducted to reinforce behavior that's beneficial to the state. So the state wants certain things and therefore they conduct a PSYOP. So they get the benefits of those behavior. For example, to earn more money because people are consuming more things. Things like this. And they basically can make you do something or can make you stay away from it. Basically label that thing as a conspiracy theory so you will stay away from it. And that way they can basically control your mind. So mind control. And today it goes really, really deep, especially when you look at things like ads, marketing, Facebook. They can influence every step you make in a way, and you don't even realize they are influencing you. You don't even realize you are controlled by them, and that's something deep. How are PSYOPs conducted? And remember, PSYOPs are intended to manipulate one's enemy. So even you can be the enemy. A group of people can be the enemy. And I wouldn't even say that it's an enemy anymore. It's just a PSYOP conducted to a group of people to manipulate their way of thinking, to control their minds basically. So it is done by many ways. It's done by propaganda, via the mainstream media, newspapers, radio, by continuously saying certain things, by getting a professor, a doctor in front of a television screen so he can tell you this narrative. So he can basically play in on this PSYOP. So he can try to convince your mind of something like the COVID pandemic. That's just one example, but we will talk about many examples later in this video. I will talk about a few modern PSYOPs here. So PSYOPs are also conducted kind of hidden in our school system, social media, or direct. So hidden, that's not many of you know that the mainstream media isn't really like properly good, right? Many of you know that the mainstream media hides certain things, but it's often also hidden in the school system. So you have to imagine that you have a daughter, right? And you send her to school. It's the first day of school and you're really happy about it because she's finally gonna learn the ropes. She's finally gonna learn how to write, how to speak, and everything. But then she comes home one day and she tells you that she actually wants to be a boy. Because her teacher told her that she can be anything she wants. And without you even realizing it, your daughter is being influenced, being manipulated in their school system to think a certain way, to fit a certain narrative. And this is deep. Imagine this happening to your child of 4 years old. So I would say PSYOPs are not really a moral thing. They are not a good thing. They are often also conducted in social media, in certain messaging. In social media, they try to influence you. They try to censor certain people so you won't listen to them. And they are done directly. And by directly, I mean sometimes the government goes into some country because they want to overthrow the government and they basically influence certain politicians so they can do certain things. Or they fund a certain group of minorities. So this group of minorities can actually like do a coup, can actually overthrow the government. And that's how... So this certain group is basically manipulated to do certain things for the government. For example, America did this a lot in like South America. So that's like PSYOPs in the military with like military objectives. Because if you can overthrow the government, you can basically install a puppet government, which is basically pro-American and does everything American wants it to do, right? So there's a lot of CIA involvement in PSYOPs, and this is called Operation Mockingbird. So Operation Mockingbird, this is a very interesting one. It's basically an operation where the CIA tries to like control the narrative. They basically feed information, false information to news outlets. So news outlets, mainstream media basically talk about it. Because for example, the CIA and the military want a certain thing. For example, they want more weapons in Ukraine. So a CIA person will tell that person of the mainstream media certain information. So the mainstream media talks about this great thing what Putin actually did, and he bombed some hospital, or he did this, or he did that. All false information. Right? And so you get a false narrative of what's going on in Ukraine. And I'm not saying here that Putin didn't do those things. I'm just saying that CIA often makes up certain information just to influence you. And that's called Operation Mockingbird. If you don't believe me, just search it on fucking Google. So examples of modern day PSYOPs, let's get into it. The first one is money, and that's one of the biggest ones. And you might not even have heard of it. Like, what the fuck, money is a PSYOP? Money is a psychological operation. And the goal of money is to create a control system, basically. It's a system that gives a certain group of people enormous control. And this group of people is basically the elite. Because you have to remember, the elite can print as much money as it wants. The elite can buy what it wants. And because they have unlimited purchasing power, they can buy whatever they want and they can control you whenever they want. At the same time, you have to work hard as fuck to earn that same money. They can raise taxes, they can do anything. They can basically control the money. This whole inflation thing, that's a psychological operation. This whole inflation thing, that's an action of the elite, because they decided to print more money for themselves, and therefore there is inflation. And inflation is basically a hidden tax which you actually pay, because now you have to work twice as hard to buy the same thing. So it's a hidden tax. So money is a way of creating a system of slaves. And this might seem like very, very radical, but you have to remember that the government can print unlimited money, do whatever they want, make sure there is huge inflation. At the same time, you have to work so hard. You have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week to even make sure you survive. So I would say that's a form of slavery, right? They can make sure you have to work 80 hours a week even to survive. You have no choice but to work. You have no other choice but to work 60 hours a week, otherwise you won't survive. That's their power. They can make you do that stuff. Another PSYOP in my eyes is consumerism. Like giving you, people, the idea that if you buy a lot of stuff, you will be happy and you will have a fulfilling life. So therefore you have to spend all your hard-earned money on a new TV, computer, all these great things, right? Luxurious vacation. They want you to consume, because if you consume, the economy will basically grow and they can make more money, because oftentimes big corporations are in close connections with the government, are even bigger than the government sometimes. So you consuming more means more money for them. So they want you to consume. They want you to consume as much as possible. Therefore, they have a lot of like advertisements on the TV. They will propagate this idea of if you buy more stuff, you will be happy all the time. Let's get into some other PSYOPs which are conducted. One of the big ones is like war and big life-threatening events. Like one of those things was like COVID-19 pandemic was a big event, and they always have something, right? There's always something. So in 2019, it was basically the COVID-19 pandemic. Now it is like war with Ukraine. Maybe in a year, when the war in Ukraine is like has died down or is over, they will bring back climate change, the carbon tax. So the goal of all those like big life-threatening events, which they continuously propagate on TV, they will tell you that that's so dangerous. We all have to allocate more money. COVID-19, we have to give more money. We have to print. And what you see now with Ukraine, we have to print more money so we can send more weapons to Ukraine. But when they print money, inflation rises and you pay double because the price of the goods double. So the goal of basically all these life-threatening events is creating unity within a state, because they create a state of fear. And because they create a state of fear, people often are distracted by this. People don't have time to fight their petty little wars. People don't have time to go to this demonstration against their own government because they're in war with Ukraine, or they have this great pandemic, right? So because there is an external enemy, it will create unity within the state. So, and there is a need for more extreme measures. Literally, the plebs, so the plebs are the people, will ask for more extreme measures. They will ask. And this is what happens with the COVID-19. They will basically, the plebs asked for more extreme measures. They asked for more control, more authoritarianism. And of course, a state wants more power, so it's always welcome. And that's basically the goal, one of those goals as well, of those huge PSYOPs, to create more power in the government. So I want to say that there are a lot of forces at play here. It's not just these two things. Often, for example, with Ukraine, it's also the military-industrial complex. And if you don't know what this is, I will make another video about it sometime. I'll Google it right now. There's a lot of money to be made there, so there are other reasons. And of course, like, you can weaken Russia if you continue the war in Ukraine. You can weaken Ukraine even. Things like this. Let's get into some other PSYOPs. Let's get into some culture PSYOPs. And you've all heard about some of these PSYOPs, of course. For example, hookup culture. The way hookup culture is propagated on TV, on these like programs like Love Island, or we have some program called Temptation Island, where the goal of you is basically to sleep around with as many girls as possible and make sure the other one cheats. It's fucking crazy, you know? It's fucking crazy. So hookup culture is a huge PSYOP, and basically the goal of hookup culture is to destroy the family unit, because people sleep around and see that as the only way of progressing in life. well, if I just sleep around, I will be more successful. And they don't really have time to start a meaningful relationship because they just want to sleep around. That's the goal of hookup culture. And therefore, if you don't really find a meaningful relationship, you don't start a family. And therefore, families are destroyed. And family is the foundation of a huge society, right? Also, one side is the destruction of men, the weakening of men. We've all heard about it. The goal is to make a man as weak as possible so men won't take action. Because you have to remember, men are the ones who take action. Women don't take action. Taking action is a masculine thing. And if you take that away, if you weaken men, they won't take action. They won't rise. They won't go to demonstrations against the government. They won't play a coup. They will stay very docile, happy, controllable, right? Another PSYOP, the last one of today, is the LGBTQ PSYOP.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay. You are a transgender.
What?
And I don't really know why this is happening. I think there are like a lot of forces at play here, but my guess is that it's to create confusion amongst weak persons, amongst persons which have more mental problems. Confusion against kids even, because they propagate LGBTQ in schools. They propagate LGBTQ to your daughter. So they're targeting little kids to be confused about their gender. They're telling kids that you can choose whatever you want to be. If you want to be a boy, you can be a boy. If you want to be a girl, you can be a girl. And that's creating like a mass confusion amongst kids, amongst people who are mentally unstable. And I would say that it's kind of the same goal as like hookup culture, basically to destroy the family unit. Because if you create masses of gay people who are transgender, they won't really start a successful family. Chances are, if you are gay, you won't really start a family, and you won't really have kids. And I might be wrong here, right? I'm even like contemplating if this is like true, but I think LGBTQ is a huge PSYOP in our society. It is being pushed, but the reason why is it being pushed? So if you have any idea why it's being pushed, leave a comment, please. I want to know more about this. So maybe it's just being pushed because our government has nothing better to do and just like to be woke, right? So if you're interested in this, you can join our private community. It's all about fitness, self-improvement. We talk about this stuff as well. And Spartans, prepare for glory.